He was down to $7 in his pocket. Oh, he had been successful in college in football at the University of Miami, but he wasn't drafted to the NFL. And he went and played in Calgary with the Canadian Football League, but was drafted in his first season. He went home with $7 in his pocket. And he saw his dad and he realized that at that moment he had a choice to make what to do. And in that moment, he made the decision, really an admirable and courageous one, to pursue wrestling. And he began to get stronger and stronger. Got a mentor, got a coach, and next thing you know, he would enter the World Wrestling Federation, soon to be the World Wrestling Entertainment today. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would go on to not just succeed in that venue, but also become an actor where in 2019, 2020, now has 2 movies since last year that have been #1 in the box office. He's expanded greatly from what would have been considered a major failure to become something of a great success. Well, how did he do it and how can we do that? Because I don't know if you felt this way, but if you ever felt like you just completely failed, have you ever just had that inner sinking feeling where you should have done it, or the plans didn't work out, or the diagnosis wasn't supposed to be like that? And you said, I need to get up and go. So today we're going to talk about how to change that feeling and make it positive in your life with some principles around courage. The first piece of courage is this: to get up and take the next step. Get up and take the next step. Not all of courage is the military, the first responders, the police officers running towards the explosion, the difficulty, the challenge. Courage really begins with that first step. That first step could look like this. Maybe you feel like poo and you want to start eating right. So the first step is, instead of choosing fast food, you choose a healthier option. Or the first step is walking into the gym when it's intimidating the first time you go in. Or the first step is to not light up that cigarette or to put down that drink. Those are courageous steps in one direction. And taking the first step is key. So if you're looking to have courage in your life and change that feeling of maybe lack of success, that feeling of failure, take the first step. Take that first step in your relationships, in your friendships, in your hobbies. The next one is the courage to be you. You have to determine who you're going to be. What is your identity? We always act consistently with our identity. So if your identity today is a coach or a speaker or a military member, first responder, you're going to have that identity at your core. And because of programs that initiate you into that life, like for instance, I have some friends who are doctors or physicians, and to be a physician, it really is a really difficult situation. You go to college, you go to grad school, you're in that school for a long time. Then you go to a type of prison called residency, where you work like 80 hours a week for $4. And in that time, you're initiated into being a physician of all kinds. Every physician has a very similar program. And when they come out, they have the identity of a doctor. But when they retire, transition, or change, like they feel cognitive dissonance. Something's wrong. They've established this identity. This identity is established through initiation, whatever your initiation is. It might have been boot camp or fire school, whatever it might be. But when you're done with it and transition, your identity shifts. So the second step is to gain control of that identity. Gain control of your identity. Well, what do I mean? Establish who you are at your core. Now, we can have identity with the jobs or vocations we do. Again, military, ministry, first responder, physician, whatever yours is, mom, dad, those are all identities. But you have to own it and say, my identity is going to be X, and I choose it on purpose. So, for instance, my identity is chosen, and it's that of a coach. My job and my reason for existing is to help you. And why I do these videos isn't for my own ego to make sure I add something more to my week to do. It's because I want to help and add value to your life and to help bring out the solutions from you, because you have the solutions inside of you. This is your identity, not mine. So whatever your identity is, you establish it. The second thing is to say, okay, your identities of a coach, mom, dad, whatever you choose, and say what attributes are associated with that identity. Write them down on purpose, and make sure they're in your life. And then the third piece of that, second step, is to say like, hey, is this bringing me joy? So for me, doing these videos, I do videos every day on Instagram, Facebook, and post all over. I write blogs 7 days a week. Is it bringing me joy? For me, the answer is yes. I actually enjoy writing them and making my goofy pins that I put up on Pinterest and places. It's super fun for me. Is it fun for you? Is this your core identity? Because if not, your core identity might be something else. You need to search it out. And really, our identity is so vital to get established. But what happens when it's changed, when it changes involuntarily? And it will. So this is the third piece to look at for courage, which is to have courage in transitions. So no matter what job you're doing, again, we started with the physician example. I've talked about law enforcement, police, and fire, as well as the military. All of these have a finite period of time. There's a retirement that happens or a departure that happens. And when that departure happens, you have to have the courage to take on a new identity. Now, having worked around and with the military for a long period of time, their transition is the most difficult that I've personally witnessed. And why is some folks are there for 20 or 30 years and they're super high performers. They are rocking it. They're working 60, 70 hours a week. They've deployed. They've done all these things. And then they're done. And they get their retirement check and you leave and there's no more uniforms. There's no more work. And I'll notice that for about the first 6 months to a year after they leave the military, these high performers go to complete dysfunction. So they'll go and just be living on the couch. They're just not able to operate anywhere near where they were. Now, part of that's normal with rest, military specifically, but also law enforcement. They work people to the bone. So they are really working for us. And if you're one of those people, I want to thank you for what you do. But I'm also recognizing that you're tired, like you have to pay that debt back. So some of that's exhaustion, but some of it is establishing the new identity. Because you'd think that just because you're a high performer in a identity, when you switch to the other, that high performance will go. But you see, your brain is processing this new identity. Your heart is changing. So you need to find this new identity and work on purpose to incorporate it into your life. And say, I was, law enforcement, military, ministry, whatever it may be, my new identity is X. This also happens with people who run into disabilities over time. So not those who are born with challenges, but those who've acquired them over time. Maybe it was a car accident or explosion where they lose limbs, and now they're trying to operate in this new world. And for instance, you might have been an athlete who've lost a leg, and now you have to adapt to the new reality. Now, sometimes you can do everything you did before, but sometimes you have to modify yourself. So maybe you can't run marathons, but in a wheelchair you can. You can literally roll through the marathon. And if you run, you'll always see those who are differently enabled than us who are doing that. And that still requires a transition. It requires a shift. Marriages are the same way. Those who are getting married or those who are leaving a marriage, that's a huge transition and it causes a period of time. So how do you navigate that transition? You're learning the identity and learning all these new things, but you also have to grieve what was lost, which means even if you left on the best possible note of whatever occupation you have or had, you say like, I'm grieving this, I learned from this, it was difficult, and I'm letting it go. So in this case, courage and the types of courage we looked at today really are pretty basic. It's just taking that first step. It's learning who you are and owning it and learning how to transition from it into a new identity. None of this is particularly hard, but it has to be on purpose and it's a decision. And most of us don't want to make that decision. So for instance, like let's say you're transitioning out of a marriage. And I see this all the time where someone's getting divorced or they decided to leave and whatever reason, they're changing out of their marriage. So they have to say, that they're no longer that person they're not married to their spouse anymore. They have to make some really significant concrete decisions in almost every area of their life. So that's financial, day-to-day living, living arrangements, all those things. When you're making that transition, you have to be very, very intentional of choosing what your new life looks like and not just falling into it by mistake, because that gives you the empowerment to own that new identity. Because owning the new identity from soup to nuts, from that first step you took, that was courageous, to owning the identity, to owning your next identity. And you can see this kind of a cycle to this. All of that requires such an immense amount of courage that is decided on purpose. And the difference between the person who falls into grief after a transition, like leaving a job, marriage, whatever, or death, and they stay in that world of grief and challenge for 7, 10, 15 years, and the person who navigates it quickly is decision. So today, if you feel that sinking feeling, let's say you left an organization, job, whatever, and you felt difficulty or challenge around it, you say, oh, if only I had treated him or her differently, they would have stayed. If only I'd worked a little harder, I would have had that job. If I hadn't made that decision, it wouldn't have happened. Whatever is causing that sinking feeling, I'd like to encourage you to make a decision to move forward and take the first step again into your new identity. to navigate that transition well and live your life. Life is far too short to live in that forever. Okay, so one, I want to thank you for supporting me. I have a new group coaching organization starting this fall. So or spring, look at me, I can say words. So if you're interested, in the next few weeks that'll be starting. So you can jump over to ninjapadre.com and check it out. And two, I want to thank you. Look, we've got a background. We're moving up in the world. So I want to thank you for supporting me through these videos. Again, not exactly a professional studio right here. I've just been a coach for about 16 years. And so now I'm learning how to do all these things. So I want to thank you. And I hope you have a spectacular day and get something from this. And leave a comment below if there's something you'd like to learn about courage or another principle. Please let me know. And have a great day and be amazing. Seriously, be amazing today. Choose on purpose.